A very active day here at Tophus Park. This is the playground behind me where the body was discovered around 10 o'clock this morning.
It does appear that it was a homicide and that more than likely it was targeted to this individual.
Now, a man who was on his way to the dog show here at the park this morning tells us he saw the body on top of the playground equipment. He went over to make sure the man was okay. That's when he realized that the man was dead. He said that there were stab wounds in his upper back and a really big wound in the back of his neck. The playground at Tophus Park where Derek Larson was murdered Sunday has been completely plowed down. You can see all that is left here is sand, and a city worker tells me they plan to plant grass here and eventually possibly put back up playground equipment. Meanwhile, we're learning more about Derek Larson as police continue their investigation. Derek Larson's mother says their family is shocked and stunned that he was brutally killed. He was a good, nice kid. He would never hurt anybody, Debbie Larson tells me. Her 31-year-old son was raised in Salmon and recently moved to Idaho Falls, where he was living with his brother. Court records show Larson has had run-ins with the law, and just 1 week ago he was in court to arrange a payment plan for a 2013 DUI conviction. I'm Nate Eaton outside the Bonneville County Courthouse where Brian Mitchell has just appeared in court for the very first time. Bond was set on the second-degree murder charge. That bond, $500,000 cash. Today in court, we heard from him for the very first time.
Mr. Mitchell, were you able to watch a video that advised you of your rights there in the jail today?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm Nate Eaton outside the Bonneville County Courthouse where we have just obtained an audio recording of the probable cause hearing held Thursday afternoon in the Brian Mitchell murder case. In this recording, we hear Idaho Falls police officer Joshua Deedy describe what happened the night before Derek Larson was murdered and the morning that he was murdered. I do want to warn you, the details are graphic, they are disturbing, and they may be upsetting.
Derek had been kicked out of his residence by his brother's roommate at about 1 o'clock Saturday morning.
That's how the chain of events began, according to the recording of the probable cause hearing. After Larson was kicked out of his house, he wandered the streets of Idaho Falls, and Detective Deedy says he met some guys parked at Key Bank. One of the men, Brian Mitchell.
They had invited Derek Larson into their vehicle because he was wandering around and it was cold at night. So they had invited him into the vehicle they were occupying, and to stay warm, they fell asleep in that vehicle during the night. They woke up the next day and they went to several locations in Idaho Falls.
Eventually, Mitchell, Larson, and a 16-year-old ended up at Tophus Park Saturday afternoon. Deedy says they were drinking vodka and the conversation turned sexual. Again, the details you are about to hear are graphic.
Brian and Derek started talking about oral sex and how they preferred their oral sex and what genders they preferred their oral sex. Who they preferred to have oral sex with.
Deedy says the 16-year-old left the park around dusk, and Larson gave him a hug and kiss on the neck. Deedy reports Mitchell says he then fell asleep on a picnic table bench.
When he wakes up, Derek is providing Brian oral sex. Brian wakes up. He's startled by this. He said he was not into that, and he's not sure why Derek would do that. And he proceeds to get up from the bench, and Derek tells Brian, well, we were talking about it earlier, and you said you were okay with this, so it shouldn't be a big deal.
Deedy says Mitchell then left the shelter and went to a nearby playground where he fell asleep inside a circular tube tunnel. He was awakened a short time later, and Mitchell tells detectives that Larson was on top of him wearing only boxer shorts.
Brian's statement was Mr. Larson was trying to pull Brian's pants down inside the tube. Mr. Mitchell says that he told Mr. Larson, stop, knock it off. If you don't knock it off, I will hurt you.
That's when a struggle ensued, and detectives say Mitchell pulled out a knife.
And he stabs Mr. Larson in the face.
Larson was stabbed over 20 times. After the violent attack, Mitchell says he ran from the park to his father's home.
He told his father that he had really messed up and that he's going to be going away for a long time. His concern was he had blood on his shirt, and so he had taken his shirt off and flipped it inside out.
Dee Dee says Mitchell's dad drove him to his grandparents' house in Shelley, and Mitchell showered and put the bloody clothes in a plastic bag. The next day, police say he threw the clothes in a nearby river. Dee Dee says Mitchell has changed a few details of his story, particularly those involving the sexual encounters.
He initially said that he was not involved in the oral sex. He's not that way. He doesn't like that. And then later on he changed his statement to yes, he may have agreed to it while he was, but he put a caveat on that he must have been sleeping when he agreed to that.
Detectives say the entire attack took place there on the playground equipment, that after he was stabbed, Derek Larson never left the slide area. Detectives say that the injuries were so bad that Derek had skull fractures and some brain injuries. It was here in this part of Toffus Park, where playground equipment used to stand, that Derek Larson was brutally stabbed nearly 30 times. The accused killer, 18-year-old Brian Mitchell. His family has remained quiet until now. In this EastIdahoNews.com exclusive, his brother says he's ready to break his silence.
I couldn't believe that he would do something like that.
Michael Mitchell. When he arrived, was he acting suspicious?
He seemed stressed out, like he didn't feel so well anymore.
Never imagined his only brother would be called a killer. What was your reaction when you saw that he had been charged with murder?
I was shocked. I was really confused. I didn't really know what to think.
Mr. Mitchell, were you able to watch a video that advised you of your rights there in the jail today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Brian Mitchell currently sits in isolation at the Bonneville County Jail, charged with second-degree murder. The victim, 31-year-old Derek Larson, found brutally stabbed to death on this Toffus Park playground on August 16th. How did you first hear about what had happened at Toffus Park?
On the news.
You saw it on the news?
Mm-hmm.
And did you ever imagine that your brother may have been associated with it?
No.
Mitchell claims Larson tried to sexually assault him twice at the park, and the stabbing was self-defense. Investigators say after Larson was stabbed nearly 30 times, Mitchell ran to his father's home in Idaho Falls. From there, his dad drove him to Shelley, where Mitchell's grandmother lives, and where Michael was waiting. Did he mention anything to you about it?
I'm not comfortable answering that right now.
And was he stressed and worried?
Yeah, he tried to sleep a lot. He avoided the news as much as possible.
A few days later, detectives showed up, took Mitchell into custody, and he was charged with murder. Since that day, Michael says his family has been trying to come to terms with the situation.
I'm a little horrified at the fact that someone would try to, sexually assault him.
Do you think that then he was justified in what he did?
I think he reacted to the situation the only way he thought he could. He woke up and there was a guy in the tube trying to do these things to him, so he might have gone a little overboard. I think that if Derek had stopped, my brother probably would have just left.
Michael says his brother had a relatively normal childhood, although he dropped out of school in the 8th grade and was homeless at the time of the murder. He admits Brian had some troubles, but says his brother never showed violent tendencies.
He's never gone out of his way to be violent. He's just been a kid, having a good time, I guess. And then, you get thrown into a situation like that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Michael believes the second-degree murder charge should be dropped in exchange for a lesser charge.
I think second-degree murder is a little overboard. I think this is the state trying to look at it as a malicious assault instead of a self-defense. So I think the state's going to try and push for the highest penalty.
Is there anything you want the public to know about your brother?
Mostly just he's not a monster, like everyone's trying to paint him out to be, it seems.
How do people react to you when you're in town? I mean, do they know that you're related? You guys look very similar.
Yeah, I have heard a couple of people that I used to know, asked me if I was going to stab them. Yeah.
In a joking way, or are they somewhat serious?
I don't even know. I get fed up with it after a while.
While he may be fed up, Michael says he stands by his brother and is hoping for a good outcome.
Is there anything that you would want to say to the Larson family?
I'm sorry that someone had to die.
Michael says he talks with his brother Brian a few times a week, but they have never discussed what allegedly happened here. Brian goes before a jury trial in April. We did reach out to the Larson family for comment. They declined our requests for an interview. I'm Nate Eaton outside the Bonneville County Courthouse, where a preliminary hearing was held this afternoon for Brian Mitchell. He will go before a jury on a second-degree murder charge involving the death of Derek Larson. This afternoon, we heard from 3 different police detectives describing their interactions with Mitchell once he was arrested and evidence they found on the scene of Tophus Park where Derek Larson was killed.
It was more than a half dozen different directions of blood spatter on the outside of this equipment. I had arterial spurt. I had a high impact area at one end of the platform. I had swiping through the blood where our victim had actually fallen against blood on the surface and fallen through it.
Detectives testified that Mitchell told them he had been hanging out with Larson at the park. They were drinking and Mitchell fell asleep on a picnic table. When he awoke, Mitchell says Larson was performing oral sex on him.
He said that he became upset with this. They exchanged a few words. He said Mr. Larson told him that something to the effect that he thought that it was okay, that they had discussed it previously. Mr. Mitchell said it was not okay. Mr. Mitchell told Mr. Larson he was going to sleep in the tube and not to follow him. Mr. Mitchell explained that Mr. Larson climbed in the tube wearing only his underwear. Mr. Mitchell explained that Mr. Larson tried to pull his pants down. Mr. Mitchell told him to stop, and then if he didn't stop, that he wasn't going to like what happened.
Mitchell's attorneys argue that Larson was aggressive that night. They say that's what led to the stabbing and that Larson allegedly told him, quote, "This is going to happen."
Then Mr. Mitchell rolled over on top of Mr. Larson, grabbed a pocket knife that he kept on his belt, and stabbed Mr. Larson.
Stabbed him 20 to 27 times, according to an autopsy, and Mitchell's attorneys say it was self-defense. They claim Mitchell stopped stabbing Larson once he let go of Mitchell's clothes, and ultimately, his attorneys told the judge that Mitchell shouldn't be charged with second-degree murder, but manslaughter instead.
There's been evidence presented that Mr. Mitchell stated he did not want to hurt this individual, he did not want to kill this individual, he just wanted this individual to stop what was happening. There has been evidence presented that Mr. Mitchell stabbed Mr. Larson a number of times, but the evidence also shows that the stabbing stopped once Mr. Larson let go of Mr. Mitchell.
In the end, Judge Stephen Clark signed this case over to district court, and Mitchell will next appear before a judge on November 3rd. Now, both Mitchell's and Larson's families were inside the courtroom this afternoon. Larson's family told me they have no comment. Mitchell's father told me he's sorry that 2 lives have been lost over this, that they hold no ill will toward anyone, and they are praying for their son.